Right, evening everybody. Welcome to the second episode of the Shake, Rattle and Roll podcast series. Very, very lucky today to have a UFC star with me, Joe Duffy. Just to give you all a little bit of background, you know, I did say that we were going to have a few of the Welsh guys on first, but Joe, being an Irish lad, but was brought up in the Welsh Valleys and lived and trained there for some time and has pretty much seen the growth of MMA in Wales right from day one. So I thought it'd be brilliant to have on and just see if his memory's as good as mine. Thinking back. So thanks for coming on, Joe. Lovely to see you again, mate. How are you doing? All right?
All good, thanks, Shake. Yourself?
All good, mate. All good. So just let people know, Joe's only got 45 minutes because the baby's in bed and she's due to wake up, I think, mate, any time now. So we'll try and get through as many questions that we've been sent in. Let's go back to the very beginning then, Joe. Obviously, you were born in Donegal Island, yeah?
Yep.
What age did you move to Wales?
I was only young, Shake. I was 9 months when I first came across. We were there for a couple of years, and then Dad was finding it hard to make the adjustment, I think. Like, obviously coming from fishermen. So then he wanted to get back to the sea. We went back home for another 6 months. And then when I was 4, we moved back over again then. And then I grew up in the valleys then.
Yeah. What was your first introduction into martial arts, Joe? How did you get involved in it?
It was, well, just watching on films more than anything, Shake. For me, it was The Karate Kid. I think it was for most kids around my age. And then my oldest brother, Martin, he signed me up to the local Taekwondo club, and that was it for me.
What age was that at, Joe? What age?
I was 5.
Right, so Taekwondo was your first. I know you was a very accomplished kickboxer. I know you're a black belt in traditional jiu-jitsu under Taijutsu Kai. What age did you think, you know, the MMA is something that you would love to have pursued? You know, what age do you think yourself, you know, I'm going to give this a crack. This is something I'd like to do when I grow up.
I think I was probably about 13.
Yeah.
So obviously, well, you would have been there, Shake. Like we started making the transition into jiu-jitsu when I was about 9. So Heath was going up to Ross up in Worcester, and he was learning under Ross in the Carrow, and then he would come down and every Saturday after squad, then after we'd done the kickboxing classes, we started doing jiu-jitsu. So that was kind of like the first introduction. And then I think like we started competing in it then pretty soon. And after a couple of years of competing in it and really getting into jiu-jitsu, then like I remember being about 13, going to watch one of the grappling strikes. And like I knew that, like I didn't know if it was a career, but it was something I wanted to do at that time, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, the difference. I would have said I was around about 2001, Joe, 2002, around that period. I think it was, wasn't it? Because that was the type of...
So let me see. My first ever jiu-jitsu tournament was 1999.
Yeah.
So I remember because I can remember the medal even now. I remember it was the best, like it was the best medal I ever won. So I was all excited. And then I think we competed. That was 1999, and then we competed in the internationals, which was in generally around the November, and it was like such a big competition. And I remember, I don't think I won the first one, but I remember the following year in 2000 winning the internationals. So I think like the jiu-jitsu we started probably doing between 98 and 99.
99. I remember meeting you for the first time. I remember coming up to you, just for the viewers that weren't at Heath Gate, who was the head instructor of Falcons Martial Arts, and there's a lot of guys come from that gym from back in the day, you know, and have moved on to have good careers. I remember coming up and walking into my first ever jiu-jitsu lesson and looking around and seeing all these kids, these fresh-faced youngsters, yourself, I think it was Adam and Chris Williams, and a lot of kids there that said at age between 13 and 15. 6, 7 adults, and I remember walking in thinking, you know, I've done a bit of judo, I've done a bit of martial arts, and I'll be fine. And I remember the life draining out of me after one. I remember I had a roll with you, and you was a scrawny little kid, and you must have triangled me 4 or 5 times during the round. And I use this as an example of my students. Like, you can come from that situation, and you can allow it to make you or break you. And the easiest thing in the world would have been, I'm not going to go back there and get trounced by a bunch of kids again. I'm just going to go back to the nightclub function room and train with some doorman in my comfort zone. But it blew my mind that how you kids that were several stone lighter than me, many, many years younger than me, just absolutely did what you wanted. And it was a fantastic introduction to me, and that's what got me hooked on the sport, you know. But I remember even back then watching you train, just, you know, you were one of them kids that was in the gym constantly, you know, always striving to improve. And me and all the adults at the time, we were convinced you were going to have a career in the UFC. But I remember saying to you, you're going to fight in the UFC, Joe. I don't remember this conversation. You said, no, Sheikh, I'm going to fight in Pride. Yeah. But unfortunately for you, the UFC bought Pride and became non. What was your attraction to the Pride? You know.
Well, the Pride started with you getting the DVDs for us. That's how that started. But I don't know. Like, it was just the Japanese reaction to the fights, you know, and then. I don't know, the rule set, like, it had a different vibe to it. Like, there was a bit more respect, but I don't know, I can't even describe it. There was something special about it. It was like all the fighters just, it was almost like money wasn't about money. It wasn't about nothing else. It was just about going in and having, you know, a war. Like, and there was something, I don't know, like, I couldn't take my eyes off it, you know.
Very raw, wasn't it? You know, with the soccer kicks and the stomps, and it was proper old school. And as you said, I think the Japanese crowd, probably one of the most educated crowds in the world, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Because they're brought up on martial arts. So, but that's one thing that stuck with me. I always remember you saying about, I'm going to fight in Pride. I'm not going to fight in the UFC. It's going to be Pride. But you never had. Well, we're not going to have that chance because I don't ever foresee them. Re-establishing the show. I can't see that happening. So what age were you, and where was your first MMA fight?
I remember I was lined up to fight Ronnie, believe it or not, Ronnie Man.
Ronnie's another established MMA fighter that's come from the grassroots with Ross Inacaro as well, isn't he? You know, a lot of guys that come from that.
That's it. There's so many, you know, so many names that started off on the Taijutsu circuit, like Mark Goddard himself, you know, Paul Sutherland, Ronnie, all these guys, you know, all these guys came through. Mark Weir, obviously fighting on Grappling Strike.
Paul Daly, Paul Jenkins,
that's it. Ross Mason. There's so many names, you know. I was meant to fight Ronnie, and then I remember getting injured the day before. Ronnie was a good bit older at the time. But obviously, like, the rule set, there was no kind of set rule set. It was a bit up in the air between amateur and semi-pro and so on. So that was kind of like, it was supposed to be my first introduction. And then it didn't happen until, let me see, it was April 2004 on the Grappling Strike Wales, the amateur one, because I missed the ML Sports. I think you guys all fought on the ML Sports in February. Yeah. But I wasn't quite 16, so I wasn't old enough to fight. So I had to wait. I had to wait for the Grappling Strike then in April.
Who was your first opponent? Do you remember?
Let me see. Do you know, Sheikh, I lost all the DVDs too. I remember my second opponent. His name was John Jones, believe it or not.
Not the John Jones, hopefully.
No, the John Jones. No, a little bit different. But actually, like I found out, I was speaking
was it John Jones? Was it Joe Jones? Was it a lad from Swansea?
There was a lad from Swansea who was Joe Jones, but this lad was from maybe Birmingham direction, because I was talking to Breeze about him not so long ago actually, and he actually had a few pro fights before that I didn't know and find out till after, but there was no set rule on like coming back to amateur or whatever. But I remember we were fighting for leg locks, and I remember like we were punching each other from leg locks, and we all just burst out laughing. I'm trying to think of the guy's name who I fought my first, but I remember looking at myself and I was just a little weed, and I was punching him and just there was no reaction. It was it looked like I had zero zip on anything.
So back in them days, obviously the amateur was the no headshot circuit. You had your grappling strikes, your ML, and then the next step up from there would be what we used to call the semi-pro rules. So it was 4-ounce gloves. In essence, pro rules MMA, but with no elbows and no headshots on the ground. When was your first pro fight, Joe, and who was that against, and what event was it on?
My first pro fight was, let me see, it was March, maybe 2008. I'm not even sure on that one, Shake. It was against Mick Broster.
I remember that.
So Mick was from the Midlands. I think he had 9 or 10 pro at the time. But I remember when we looked at him, we thought it was a good fight, because he wasn't so dangerous in the striking department, but he was a good grappler, But we thought it was a nice test, but also kind of like a safe start into the pro rules almost,
Yeah. Mick his own 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu club now, doesn't he, up in Birmingham? I believe he's gone on to get he's had his black belt off Eddie Bravo as well, Mick. So, it's a good old school guy to have as your first pro fight. It was a tough test.
Yeah, that's it. I think he was talking about doing a pro fight not so long ago. Because believe it or not,
I've seen it on Facebook. Yeah, I think he did. I think he I'm not sure if it was Craig Allen or somebody like that. He had an opponent, and then he ended up having a last-minute guy step in. One of the journeymen from Wales jumped in there. I think he was. Tyler. I might be off on that, but I'm sure he did back last year. And I think he was coming up to 50 in fairness, and props to him. Like, listen, I'm 48 and I got no aspirations of ever lacing up my gloves again. It's a young man's sport. I say this to everybody. I watch my guys down there now, and we, the difference is, and I say this to everybody, when we first started out in the sport and we were competing in the Eberville Leisure Centres and the Worcester Leisure Centres, the level, even though we thought it was very, very good, compared to today, is a totally different planet. And back in those days, Joe, I think there were pros who would maybe train 2 or 3 times a week, and they'd be happy to drop in, earn a couple of bob, and could drop in a 20. To try and get a short notice fight now is incredible, because even the amateurs on the circuit, with the IMAFs, and not just my club in Wales, right through it, was the level of amateur fighters is probably 10 times what the pro fighters were back in the late 2000s. Would you agree? Would you agree with that?
Without a doubt. I remember, I don't know when it was, maybe last year or a year before, I was watching Cage Warriors, and I think it was Ben Ellis. I think it was his last amateur or something.
Yeah.
And I remember watching him and thinking, like, I looked at the level and I was looking at his record. I was like, this guy, like, is crazy. Like, what he was doing. I was thinking when I think back to amateurs, like, it's night and day, what they're going in at now.
And I think, and I say this to all the youngsters with me, they don't know how blessed they are to have a range of gyms in Wales which have got state-of-the-art facilities, top-level coaching. I mean, bloody hell, when you and I were training back in the 2000s, a black belt in BJJ, he was like this mystical character that we probably thought we'd never ever have a chance to train with, but Wales and the UK, and now we've got hundreds of black belts right through the areas, training really good level grappling now. So I think the amateurs, they're blessed to have, when we were there, as you said, Heath was travelling up to Worcester, learning a bit, bringing it back to us guys, and I would go up to Worcester regular with Ross. I know yourself, you would. Whereas now it's on your doorstep. You don't have to travel, and you can have 7 days a week tuition off elite level black belts. And I think that's been a key change over the last 15, 20 years that they take for granted a little bit. I say this to the youngsters in my gym: you take things for granted. If you'd been around 15 years ago, you'd realize how tough a sport this really was.
It's crazy. I was speaking to Ross maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and he was telling me about Carly Gracie, when Carly Gracie first came over here. And he was saying, like, Carly couldn't give away ground fighting, you know? Nobody was interested in, like... So obviously, like, Ross would have to have him do self-defense techniques and everything, but nobody was interested. And that's back in... I think that was back in 98. Yeah,
98. I remember going up to... one of the Carly seminars up with Ross as well, and that was late 90s, early 2000s, if my memory's on it. But it was, like I said to everybody about in 2003, 2004, I went up to the Royce seminars, and it was like you're a little bit overwhelmed when you were in their company, you know, because they were from the Gracie family. But what I think Ross doesn't get a lot of credit for is that he put so much grappling techniques into his traditional jiu-jitsu system, and I think that's why. For me, I felt that Ross was leagues in front of anybody in the UK at the time with regard to, you know, being in a position to teach a martial art which was real, which you could transfer into MMA or transfer into a self-defense situation on the street. And I don't think he gets a prop sometimes, Ross, that he should, to be honest.
Without a doubt, you know. Just I remember, like when I was competing in the UFC, I'd be back and I would go to train with Ross, and I'd be struggling with, like, I don't know, maybe something, say we're talking about an over-under, like in the clinch or something, and I'd go to Ross and he would just come up with the most simple answers.
Yeah.
You know, and it wasn't like something he studied. It was just like a total feel thing, like his reaction. Like he could give you like 100 variations of a Udigarami, but you wouldn't even think of it, you know, like it's incredible. Like just his feel for the techniques themselves, and it was such a different point of view. So, you know, I really loved getting that. Like,
brilliant martial artist. Somebody I've got respect for even to this day. You know, and I keep in touch occasionally and with his son and drop him an email, and you know he's doing well up there. So. First pro fight was against Mick Broster. You then had a period where you moved to London and you were training up at the MMA clinic. Several fights there, and then you made the decision to take up boxing and have a bit of a hiatus from the MMA. How long was your boxing career, Joe? How long was you doing that for?
So let me see. It was actually when I moved to London. The plan was to move to Jackson's, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So I just fought for the Cage Warriors title. I lost in that, and then the plan was to go there when I was rehabbing my hand and to move to Jackson's MMA. But then I started training with John Tandy there in the MMA clinic, and just from there that I ended up boxing more than anything. It was nothing planned.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. I think it was maybe 3 years, Shake. I was like.
What was your record, Joe? 7-8-0, if I remember rightly.
7-0. 7-0. Yeah.
So you had that. Then you had you made a decision to come back and fight on Cage Warriors, and I think it was it one fight before you signed your UFC deal?
2 fights. So I fought once in Ireland and then once in the Copper Box.
Copper Box, right? So. Yeah, I think the one was you submitted, not submitted. I think it was the knee, wasn't it? Was it on the back end of the finish with the? It was a beautiful shot. You hit him with the knee, cleaned him out, and you didn't follow up, which you know you had a lot of plaudits for. And then you had the call. How did that feel when you finally had the call to say, like, there's a realization of something you've been dreaming of since I remember you as a kid at 12, 13 years of age. How did that feel when I'm guessing it was Graham contacted you and gave you the news at the time? Was he your manager at the time?
So I knew before the fight. I knew as long as I won the fight that I was signed. So it was one of them. It was kind of like yeah, exactly. But I had such a good camp. Like I was training between the MMA clinic and Team Titan.
Yeah.
I had such a great camp, you know. I remember just everything was starting to click into place because I only been back in MMA maybe 5 months.
Yeah, I don't think it was long because I remember I thought, right, you fair play. You had 2 quick fights, and but you had the pedigree behind that, mind you. You know, you'd had the break from boxing, but you were probably one. You know, if you hadn't gone into boxing, you'd have probably picked up your UFC contract in a fight or two anyway. I think on the back end, even after coming off the loss in the world title fight when you broke your hand. But so you got signed. How many fight deal was it? The original deal, was it 4 fights in line with most guys?
I think it was five fights.
5 fights. And so going back to it, how did you feel when that came through? You know, when you had the news and it was signed.
Yeah, it was amazing. I remember getting the news. I think it was the 2nd of January, because I remember the 1st of January, and I thought, do you know what? Like I got a feeling that, like I knew obviously come with the win I would get a shout, but whether it was like a good deal or whatever, like I was gonna speak with Graham, and then I got the feeling like after New Year, right, need to get dialed in straight away, and then I got the news on the 2nd, and I think pretty much from there, then me and Graham, like, we discussed things, and I booked a flight for Montreal, for TriStar, to do my camp out there.
So that's a question I was going to move on to next. So you've gone out there, yeah, just to train pretty much and do a camp, and I'm guessing the experience made you feel this is a place I want to train full time. And you know, was that when you made the decision to move there full time?
Pretty much. I was there maybe. It was my 2nd session there on the Tuesday. I went sparring, everyone shaking, I got lit up.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you know what? Like, these guys are just leagues above me. You know, if I'm going to be serious about this, I need to make the move and really up my level.
Yeah. On that note, I'm going to drop onto some of the questions I've been asked, because there's a few of them around the TriStar, if you don't mind with that. Now, Ryan Lewis, who's from Newport, what he's asked is, who's the toughest fighter that you sparred with during your time at TriStar, and what would you say was your greatest challenge personally, having to move to a totally different culture and start up a life in Canada?
I'd say one of the most impressive has got to be Mandel Nalo.
I think I met him with you at one of the UFC events. You've introduced me, and I was watching you guys rolling. Very, very talented lad, yeah.
So when we're in Halifax Shake, remember Fraz was breaking down everything.
Yeah,
I was with Mandel, and then he was with us in London. But he fights on Bellator, and like he's got an overall game that's like very impressive. He's definitely one of the most. Obviously, George. You know, George. Like when
George St. Pierre, yeah.
Like just when you see like especially his takedowns. When you see and spar and experience it, this is very impressive.
Yeah. How surreal was that for you? Was because I know full well that you weren't just an MMA competitor, a bit like me, an MMA geek, as we say, where it absorbs our life and you're following it on the TV, online, and it takes up a great part. How did that feel to think, do you know what? I'm GSP's teammate now. You know, that must have been a surreal moment in your life as well. That realization, hang on, this is somebody I've looked up to for all of my life since he's been competing, and now I'm on the same mat day in, day out training with the guy.
It was crazy. I remember, so obviously on the Ultimate Fighter, like I met him briefly. So that was pretty surreal. And then training with him. But I would say the most surreal bit for me was with the whole concussion thing in Ireland. He actually texted me just to check in to make sure it's okay, and then like he gave me some advice and everything, and that was probably the most surreal moment for me.
Funny enough, next question's off a guy called James Messenger. I don't know if you know James, and he said, his question was, what was the situation behind the concussion when you was withdrawn by the UFC for the Dublin card?
So it was the last bar. I don't know whether it was Friday or Saturday. I forget because they changed the sparring days around. Everything going well. Last round, caught a kick. that dropped me.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty bad one. But
is that the Saturday the week before or 2 weeks before, Joe?
The week before.
The week before, right.
The week before. So nothing out of the ordinary, like to most people, to me, Shake. Like now I extended to a good 10 days before since that, because
yeah.
But it's a tricky one because you can't wrap yourself up in bubble wrap, you need to get ready for a fight. So I spoke with Faraz after. Faraz was like, look, give Joe Silva an email, just let him know what happened. He said, just in case, you wake up tomorrow and you're in a bad state,
Yeah.
He said, like, if you're throwing up or whatever, he said, like, and things are bad, and the fact you can't fight, obviously it gives them a little bit of time to get a replacement in if need be. So I emailed Joe, got through the weekend, felt fine, done my training on the Monday, felt fine, flew in, I think, the Monday, and then when I got off the plane, then I had to start jumping through hoops, doing tests, see this doctor. So obviously I didn't know this was all coming. And then on the Wednesday night, I got the news off the UFC staff that they weren't going to let me fight.
Yeah, devastating. And that for you being an Irish lad to have headlined a card against a real legit opponent like Poirier in Dublin would have been a dream come true, I'm guessing. We were out there for the fight, me and Jack. It was a couple of weeks before Jack fought in the Europeans in the IMAFs, and we met up with you a couple of times when we were out there. But we were devastated because you were off the card. That you were the main reason that we bought tickets as well. But what I will say is there were 8 fights on the card, and that sporting event is, for me, the greatest atmosphere I've ever witnessed in my life. I've never seen a crowd get behind their people like that Irish crowd. And that gave me a little bit of inspiration and aspiration to create that in Wales, which I think we have to some extent with the Ice Arena shows. So it was phenomenal. The next time the UFC are in London, in Dublin, fingers crossed, August the 15th, can be something that guys can look at. But again, I'm in the current climate, I'm not going to hold my breath. If you can get tickets, guys, get down there, because it is something like you will never, ever experience. That Dublin crowd, get behind the guys like nothing else. So, are you hopeful of getting on that Dublin card? August 15th?
I'm hoping so. I spoke to my manager. He said, yeah, I got your name down for it. So, like you said, with the current climate, it's hard to gauge how everything's going to be. But definitely, and to be honest, Sheikh, like you said, the atmosphere. I remember when Aisling Daly walked into Zombie. The atmosphere, like it was
incredible. Aisling Daly, Paddy Holohan, the crowd reaction to when he came out. Neil Seary was off the chart. Darren Till received people forget that fight. Darren Till fought Dalby to a draw.
Dalby, what a fight!
It was a heck of a fight,
They got fight of the night, didn't they? They got fight of the night. I think what happened? So it was like a 10-8 round in the first round, and then
10-9. Yeah, you're right.
10-9. What a fight! It was incredible.
Brilliant fight. Couple of questions. What do you consider the best win of your career?
Like like my favorite fight, or like
yeah. For you personally, you have a lot of stats. So I think, do you know what, they can never take that from me. That was a great performance, or just the opponent.
I think for me, it's probably the Mitch Clark fight.
Yeah.
Like no, by far not the biggest name, but after losing to Poirier, and I remember how heartbroken it was, and then getting back in the gym and just how determined at the whole camp. Like I was training like 3 times a day from pretty much 2 weeks after the fight until I fought in July, and just to be able to bounce back and bounce back with a statement. That's probably one of my most favorite fights.
Yeah, brilliant. Who is your favorite fighter of all time?
GSP.
Well,
GSP, but like you remember, Sheikh, when we were young, like Vanderlei.
I was just going to say, I remember you being a massive Vanderlei fan, so Vanderlei and GSP probably your top two, yeah.
I think what kind of took the mystique away from me a little bit with the whole Vanderlei was the whole once you find out like Pride was full of everyone on steroids, like that kind of took the mystique away a little bit from me.
I was talking to somebody at a UFC event that had fighters on Pride, and they said that the contract states in capital letters, "You will not be tested for steroids."
Well, yeah, no wonder we got the fights we did. Jesus, it was crazy.
All right. So Mitch Clark was your favourite fight. What was your toughest fight to date? You know, somebody that, you know, won your respect after the bout. It could be a win, it could be a loss. But what was your toughest fight where you've really had to dig deep?
I'd say I would probably say Francis Higney. So it was the first time I ever went the distance, and I remember rehydration. I messed it up a little bit. Like I ate something a little bit too soon before I took all my fluids in, and I remember it just sitting there the whole time. And I remember doing the interview after and just trying not to throw up. And I remember then I think it was Jay Furness. Like we're backstage, and he pulled out his dictaphone. He asked the first question, and just as I went to answer, I threw up everywhere.
So I think probably that was obviously on the Cage Warriors. The Cage Warriors. A lot of people, and I say this to everybody. You know, when you're a fighter in the UFC and you ask that sort of question, I think they automatically think you're going to mention one of your UFC bouts. But I even think now, I think Cage Warriors has got itself to a level where the majority of the athletes in Cage Warriors could step into the UFC, no problem at all. I think the apprenticeship they do there now with regard to the level of fighters and the way they step you up through the levels, and also fighting in front of big crowds and on TV, you know, getting used to the lights and the pressure. So, Francis Higney, I think that's one, you know, for people that are watching are probably not familiar with. So have a little Google of him, and you'll see he's a very solid fighter from the Cage Warriors. Is he still fighting, Frank? Is he still?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Like, I'm the world's worst. Like I don't follow it very much now. Like when I was a kid, I watched everything, but now, I barely watch any of it. You know.
When you went into the UFC, obviously you went in there with this reputation of being the last guy at the time to have beaten Conor McGregor. So did you feel any added pressure with that when you was with the organization? Did you feel that sometimes it can be a little bit unfair that, you know, they're bringing that up constantly rather than, you know, your opponents might have found it a bit disrespectful? I used to think sometimes when you were facing somebody, and rather than asking you, how do you feel about your opponent that you're going to be fighting? There was a lot of questions thrown at you, and I remember this back in the day of, you know, do you think you'll have a rematch with Conor? Do you think, you know, how does it feel to be the last man? You know, so did that add any pressure to you when you signed for the UFC, or you being you just took in your stride and went with it?
I think it added a little bit because other people were playing it up to be something it wasn't, you know, like at the time for me, it wasn't a big fight in the sense of like now if somebody asks me, it's not one of my favorite wins. In fact, the camp was terrible. I didn't enjoy nothing about it. Like for me, it was bouncing back after losing on the Ultimate Fighter. Yeah. And it was a fight that I expected myself to win, you know. Conor wasn't a known fighter at the time, so like even now, like it doesn't really give me no satisfaction. If anything, is more of a monkey on my back because I can't just do my own thing, you know. Yeah.
Do you think is that in the past? There's never no chance now of a rematch, you think, with Conor? Do you think that again, a couple of wins behind you and they try and sell that again, maybe as a possible?
Maybe I can't see it happening, Sheikh, to be honest. Like just. Like obviously, like Conor's up there, so I need a few wins without a doubt. And like I've offered myself for the fight a few times. Like I think before Diaz stepped in, and like a few times when he's had a few pullouts. And obviously, like he's the guy. He can call whoever he wants to fight.
Of course,
you know? But obviously, if he was interested in the fight, then like I'm sure he would have said yes, you know. So maybe it's a fight that doesn't interest him.
Okay. Well, while we're on Irish MMA, obviously there was the huge purple patch, you know, when Conor signed yourself. There was Pendred, you know, quite a few from the SBG, your Neil series. And there was a real purple patch for about 18 months, I felt, where, you know, you were selling out the Dublin Arena regular, you know, the fans were following Conor all over the world. Then there's been a little bit of a dip. Quite a few of the guys got cut, and probably just yourself at the moment is the only. Am I missing anyone? Are you the only Irish signed fighter at the moment?
I think so. I think it's just me and Conor now. I think, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, obviously, I follow the Cage Warriors scene very, very closely. And I do believe that you are going to see another spike again. I think you've got youngsters coming through like Paul Hughes, Ian Gary, Rhys McGee. You know, I know McColgan's just coming off a loss, but again, you know, it can be a tough fight for anybody. But I think those three lads in particular have got the potential. Are you aware of these guys, Paul Hughes and Ian Gary and Rhys McGee? Yeah.
So I trained with Rhys. Rhys actually made a trip out here a while ago, and obviously Joe. I've seen Joe fight against Mace, and I've seen him in previous fights. Obviously, you know, a great fighter. Ian Gary, like he seems to be exploding on the scene too.
Yeah, he's a character. You know, I've met him a few times, and I think he's got that persona as well. You know, the Irish crowd love as well.
So I'm sure, you know, like it's like that. Like I find once you have a big wave, then obviously it generates a lot of interest, and then after that comes another wave, you know.
I think these lads are a product of the first wave. They were the kids that, well, this is what I want to do. I mean, I watched Paul Hughes' last couple of fights, Paul Hughes, and I really think he's got potential to go into the UFC. Ian Gary 100%, Rhys McGee 100%, you know, and I think Joe could have. He's coming off a loss with Mason, but again, that's something for him to have a look at. But I think if the August 15th card had gone ahead, we may have seen possibly McGee get signed. I think a bit too soon for Ian and Paul at 3-0 and 5-0. But Rhys, I'm pretty confident if he'd have won the world title on the Cage Warriors event in May, he'd have had that call in August, you know.
100%, yeah. You
know, we were hopeful as well with it being in Dublin that it was going to go ahead, because we would have loved to go on there without Jack and, you know, Brett and Marshman. But I don't see it happening, if I'm honest. I think it'll be too soon after this lockdown. I think this could roll on till July, August. Obviously then you're proud Irish. Remember, you were brought up in the Welsh Valleys, just down the road from myself. What's your thoughts on the state of Welsh MMA at the moment?
I think it's the perfect time for Welsh MMA now. I'd say with Jack now, a couple of wins, I would say it's probably only going to be a matter of time before they start looking at a show in Wales. You know, Mace is bound to be signed. You know, he's got a title. So that's straight away, that's four UFC lads out of Wales, you know, all young and talented guys.
Well, if Mason signs, that would be 5, because we got Phillips, Marshman.
Oh, Brett, Phillips too, of course, yeah.
Brett, and Phillips has just signed a new contract. Brett and our Jack. Mason, and I had this conversation with Paul Jenkins in my podcast I done with him last week. The only issue is a facility to hold it, because the Motor Point will only hold 4,500, the Ice Arena's 4,500, and I think they would want a bigger venue, you know. And I've spoken to guys at the UFC about the logistics of it, and that's the feedback I'm getting back off it as well, you know. So until we put a bigger arena there, I think we might struggle. But I think it would be perfect now, and I think there's a few other guys who could get signed on the back end of it. Like I said, it would be perfect for Mason to sign. I got a lad training with me, Oban Elliott, and I don't know if you've seen him fight Joe, but at 22 years of age, he's terrifying. I really believe that he's 18 months away from getting a UFC contract. So it's in a really, really good position at the moment, and I think you've probably seen that from over the waters. It'd be nice for you to see just how it's been progressing.
Without a doubt, yeah. I was down at the last one. I was down at the last one in the Ice Arena, and you know, there's so much talent coming through now that, like you said, like the way, like I feel like MMA in Wales has been strong for a long time, you know, since back in the days. You remember, like, a Tuesday night grappling down in Iberville, Iceland, the amount of people that would travel from all over to come and train with us. Obviously, we were starting to make a bit of a mark on the combat sports and everything else, so people were traveling from all over to train with us. So, in a way, like, we're right at the forefront of it. It's just taken till now for the young stars to kind of break through, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think they probably look at Wales as a country as a little bit unfashionable. You know, there's a lot of talk when you talk about the Irish MMA scene. You had a lot of the Irish fighters coming through on the boxing scene, and which were famous in America, and the links where they can market you Irish guys in Boston and places like that when you come across to America. But I think Wales for too long, because I honestly think Philip should have been signed a lot sooner. Marshman should have been signed a lot sooner. Brett possibly, Jack, we knocked back a couple of times because we wanted it to be the right time when we signed. We wanted to come in and make a statement. But I think now we're seeing a real purple patch, and I think we'll see a lot more over the next 2 years on the roster, which will just be great. I mean, as you said about people coming to train at my place now, we're averaging anything between 60 to 80 in a session. And they're coming from everywhere, because it's not just a facility. We've got the level we've got 3 guys from the UFC fighting there. We've got 6, 7 pros who are constantly fighting on Cage Warriors. But add to that, we've got a stable of amateurs, Joe, that, would wipe the floor with the majority of pros on the scene, if I'm honest. So it's a real strong thing. And I'm excited to see where we're going to be in 24 months. It'll be a real nice insight to have a look back and think that the things that I'm predicting will come true.
I think, like you said, if they get the arena thing sorted, because there is a big marketability behind, like, Welsh fighters. You look at Welsh boxing.
Exactly. Zaggy, Gavin Rees, Gary. Go back years and years ago. The Matchstick Man,
Johnny Owens, Howard Winston, all these. Look at Martha. I think there's 2 or 3 there that's so famous. Boxers.
Steve Robinson in Cardiff, another world champion. People forget about. So yeah, it'd be great if they come, and it'll be nice to see. That's when I'm constantly, again, you say I'm looking for something, and that's one of my dreams, is to get an event in Wales. And I think the Millennium Stadium's a far cry at the moment, unless you get a GSP or Connor to come and main event it, which I can't ever see happening at the moment because of the pay-per-views and the difference in the times between you and the
time zones.
So the time zones is the issue. Right, won't keep you too much longer, Joe. Couple more questions. If you were a matchmaker, what would be your dream match that you could put together? Not for you. Two guys you would love to see fight.
Probably the GSP Khabib fight.
Oh yes, please, yeah.
I think.
Can you imagine the interest that would generate?
I think it's an incredible fight.
And 2 of my favorites, and because I love both guys, and I love just the way they carry themselves. For me, they, like yourself, there's no bullshit and brashness. It's what martial arts should be like. 2 guys, the trainer, very respectful, keep yourselves to yourselves, but turn up and deliver on the night. So that's one I would, there'd be no trash talk needed to sell that, would there?
100%, yeah.
All right. One more question I've been asked. If you could fight anyone from the past, who would it be?
Anyone from the past? I think for me, it's all my losses. I would like to fight all them again. But I think ideally, I would love to redo the whole Dublin situation.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I would like to fight Poirier over the 5 rounds. But if I could, it's probably not the right thing to say. But as a fighter, if I knew better, then I wouldn't have mentioned the concussion, and I would have just rocked up ready to go like I was on fight week. And redo all that again, All
right, mate. Right. When can we expect to see you? You fit and ready? Because I know you've had a few operations over the past 18 months, I believe. Yeah, are you fit and ready to go now?
Well, once I get training shape, at the minute it's daddy daycare. So I'm lifting weights here, and I'm just shadow boxing. That's pretty much all I can do. But my missus is working in the hospital, so I'm looking after the baby every day. But August, that's the plan. So
So, how long would you need, Joe? What would be an ideal, fight camp for you coming after this layoff? Because you're someone I know that's always in the gym, so doesn't probably need normally under normal circumstances a huge camp. But you're probably going to need a fair size camp on the back end of this, I'm guessing.
I would like 12 weeks. I'd like a base level of fitness, and then I would like to really hit it hard for like 8 weeks. 8 weeks you can fight. Yeah. When you think about our old camp for Grappling Strike, 3 or 4 weeks, and we were fit.
Yeah.
We were fit.
I remember, and I say this to the youngsters down here, I remember there's a period with you and me where we were pretty much competing every week, whether it was grappling strike, you and me would travel everywhere, and I was looking back the other day, and I think, because I keep a log of every competitive bout I have, and it's, for just on the grappling and jiu-jitsu, it's over 400 bouts for me now, so you can't buy that experience. And I say, you're a perfect example of somebody who was a true martial artist that competed in all facets: boxing, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, MMA, and it's probably seen you well in your career as well, because that's helped you adapt with the nerves. I'm glad you're fit. I'm glad you're well. We'll look forward to seeing you fighting again soon. Hopefully in August, and hopefully we can have a few of my guys on as well. We can have a catch up and maybe a pint of Guinness after the bout as well. Just let the people watching know where they can find you on social media.
Oh Jesus, Sheikh, I'm not the best on social media, but let me think. Duffy MMA on Instagram. Duffy _MMA on Twitter, I think, and Facebook. I'll be honest, I'm the world's worst on social media.
Right on. I'll put a slide up at the end of the video with your details on, mate. And like I said, Joe, it's great to have a catch up, buddy. I miss you. You're living abroad. From a personal point of view, really proud to see what you've done with your career and done with your life as a man as well, mate. So best of luck, buddy, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Sheikh. I'll speak to you soon.